Hey, welcome, Ryan. Thanks for joining us on the just conversations, and yeah, I'm really privileged and honored that you'd join us for a chat about what's going on, catching up.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
having me here.
oh, you are absolutely welcome. Um, Ryan, I've known you. Oh
Too
my
long,
gosh,
too
oh,
long.
no, quite some time.
Yeah, it's
Probably
been probably coming up on eight years now, maybe
it's got
9 years.
it's got to be about that. Yeah,
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 yeah.
crikey.
Well, I graduated in 2010, so yeah, we would have met maybe 2012.
Yeah, yeah. Wow,
Yeah,
long time ago.
yeah, it is a little bit, eh?
So, tell us what did you, well, for people who don't know you, what did you graduate in, and what have you been doing since you graduated?
Sure. So, do you want the long story or the short story to begin with?
Let's go long story. We've
Long
got time.
story. So, my degree was it's a bit it's difficult to explain because I would like to say that I have a degree in documentary photography, but that's not quite true. It was based on kind of like the American system at more of a polytechnic university. So my actual degree is in media production brackets photography. So it was kind of the first 2 years was sort of generic media production. We did a bit of TV, a bit of radio, a bit of graphic design, web design, all kind of stuff. And then in the second year and completely in the third year, we sort of picked a major and minor subject to specialize in really. So I started to specialize in documentary photography, just stills photography. Which was cool. I kind of did that because I always knew I wanted to work in the media. Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to work in the creative industries. I was one of those people through school that I didn't really excel anywhere, but I could hold my own both academically and creatively. So I feel like I could have gone down more of an academic career route, or I could have done the creative stuff. But I think it was the creative stuff that I found more challenging, and that kind of set me on fire a bit more. So I knew that was what I wanted to do, but I was quite vague as to what that looked like. So a degree that kind of gave me a bit of a taste of everything and allowed me to specialize was really appealing. And I hadn't really touched video all the way through university. I became very much like a die-hard documentary photographer. I was quite openly hostile, shall we say, towards fictional photography and video and a lot of other forms. I guess I developed this belief that documentary stills photography was kind of the purest form of photography, and it was what it was intended for originally. And I've certainly chilled out a bit on that regard, but that was where I was at the time. And then in my final year, I was forced, and I say forced, sort of kicking and screaming, forced to work on a collaborative project with the film students, and started to realize that video was actually quite fun. And you could achieve a lot more in a shorter space of time through video than necessarily you could through photography, which I guess isn't completely true. I think you can do a lot with a very profound stills photograph, but I just liked the opportunities that video presented. And so then I graduated and I had this specialism in documentary stills photography, but also this kind of growing interest in video. And all the while being at university, I had this other side of me that was just sort of sold out on outdoor sports, and I was big into climbing and mountaineering. I was president of the climbing club at university, and I trained as a climbing instructor, which I was doing as kind of like a part-time job. So really, when I graduated, all I knew was that I wanted to kind of see the world. I'd only been to 3 countries maybe at this point, like Belgium, Spain, and America, North America. So I knew I wanted to see the world. I wanted to climb mountains and go to really cool places and explore that through photography, and somehow trick people into paying me to do that. So I didn't really know what that looked like, but I'd always been really inspired by shows like Planet Earth, and all these Attenborough documentaries growing up. And I do remember sitting watching, I think it was the original Frozen Planet, and just thinking that looks like something I could do. That looks pretty cool, but never really realistically considering it. It was like, is that even a job? Can you get paid to do that? But then when I graduated, it kind of became clear that you could get paid to do that, that it would be very difficult, that it would be a long road and a lot of hard work, but that you could make it into a career. So that's pretty much what I decided to do. So I refused to get a proper job when I graduated. The most I think
I've lost you there, Roy. You're gone.
tethered to my phone now, which should be a bit more reliable.
Okay, cool. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so when I graduated, I kind of refused to get a proper job. The most proper job I'd ever had was working for Woolworths for about 3 months when I was a teenager. So I basically, I mentioned I was a climbing instructor, and I'd been working at the Students' Union as a sound engineer for live gigs and stuff whilst I was at university. So both of those allowed me the flexibility to keep working and just about cover my rent, but also have ultimate flexibility that when TV jobs came along, I could kind of drop everything and do them. So I went freelance from graduating, which was difficult at first. And I lived in a number of not very nice places because it was all I could afford, but it was what I wanted to do, and it was what I needed to do to make that happen. And it just kind of snowballed from there, really. I started out doing some work on some dramas and commercials, and the turning point for me was eventually I got a job at a camera facilities company that was opening in Cardiff, where I was living at the time. And they were one of the big facilities company that provided all the camera equipment for all of these big wildlife documentaries. So I knew that by going there, I'd be learning the equipment and hopefully make the contacts. So I spent about a year and a half there. And then I left to go freelance again. And that was it, really. From there on, I've just been pretty much solely working on wildlife and science documentaries and expedition stuff. So now 95%, maybe even 99%, to be honest, of my work is abroad. Mostly on big, what we call blue chip wildlife shows. So the sort of Attenborough fronted, Planet Earth, Our Planet, things like that. And I do quite a bit of science expedition work as well. So going to far-flung corners of the world with teams of the world, there's only one of them, far-flung corners of the world with teams of scientists. It's kind of studying anything from glaciers to volcanoes. And within that, I've started to specialize. So I specialize very much in cold and high places. So I work a lot in the Arctic, Canadian Arctic, Norwegian Arctic, and I do a lot of high altitude work as well. Two big projects I've been working on at the moment. I can't say too much detail on them, but one is a big film about polar bears, which I've been working on for the past year and will probably be on for at least another year now. And another one is a big feature film that we'll be releasing hopefully online this autumn, which is all about glaciers and how they've been affected by climate change, but also kind of told through the eyes of extreme sports and mountain athletes. So yeah, that's kind of what I do now, really. Or at least it's what I did do until this crazy world we find ourselves in.
So yeah, I mean, what an amazing journey for one. I think that's really, really cool. And sheer having seen you for much of that, known you for much of that journey as well, I think it's just been your sheer dedication to the dream.
It's been a bit of a roller
As
coaster.
oh, for sure, for sure. And I think that's that's with anything in life. When you're chasing a dream, particularly, there's ups and downs to that, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think what's been clear to me is you're a very dedicated person. You're dedicated to your craft, to your work, and you're dedicated to that dream. I've heard you talk numerous times about always imagining one day being able to work on something like Planet Earth, and then there you are filming on Planet Earth too.
Yeah, it was
That's
it was surreal, to be honest. Like I started out, as a lot of people do, working on some of the smaller, more kind of British based wildlife programs, things like Spring Watch and the One Show and stuff like that. Always with my eyes on doing the big international blue chip productions. And I just remember being in the cinema at we call it a TX party, so like a transmission party where the program's first broadcast, and all the crew will get together and watch it together. So I remember being in the cinema watching Planet Earth 2, the Mountains episode, which I worked quite a bit on, go out, to millions of people across the UK, and just seeing some of my footage with David Attenborough's voice over it. And it was weird. Like, it was amazing. And it was, but it was weird, yeah. And it kind of, you might think that in a moment like that, you'd be like, yes, I've made it, I'm here, I've achieved, just keep going. But I totally felt like a fraud at the time. and I still do now, and we're 4 years on from that, maybe 5 years on, I don't know. But I think I hear the same, it's a pattern I hear, particularly amongst creative types, this kind of imposter syndrome thing. I don't think you've ever made it. And I think the day you start feeling like you have is the day you should probably start doing something else. I just don't think it's the right attitude to have. I think there's always more to learn. There's always more people to learn off, especially in industries like television or any of the creative industries that are so collaborative. There's not really I kind of always had my eyes on sort of the end game of working on these documentaries, and then realized there isn't really an end game. Like, there's no ceiling, there's no, that's it. There's always more, there's always something new to do, something new to discover, something new to learn or contribute to. And that's a really exciting journey to go on.
Yeah, that's so good, man. So 2020 happened.
It did happen, didn't it?
And it's still
Is
happening.
it over yet?
Unfortunately not. Oh man,
2021.
no, that's not. No, I can't even think about that. Let's get through July first. Right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
how's that affected your industry?
um,
Obviously, international travel is.
yeah, honestly, brutal. It's been absolutely brutal. I think I'm fair in saying this. I know many industries have suffered hugely because of this, but from what I saw in my circles, my friendship groups, my family, TV and film was one of the first to go down. In your average year, I might work 6 months out of the year, and that tends to be in stints of 4 weeks abroad, and then might be home for a few weeks, and then abroad and home and whatever. But this year was looking crazy. I was fully booked from mid-March until November. Basically, I literally could not have fitted anything else into my diary if I wanted to. It was rammed, and I had bookings coming in for 2021 already. So for me, it was a real, I'd never been in such a strong position at the start of a year. And I remember, all this kind of kicking off out in China, and then closer in Italy and France and stuff early in the year. And I was, I've always been a massive optimist, and I was just like, yeah, it's going to blow over. We've got amazing scientists, we've got amazing healthcare professionals, amazing public health professionals. They'll get on top of it, and it'll be fine. Because in our lifetime, we've lived through already 2 pandemics or potential pandemics, with swine flu and Ebola and SARS and things like that. And you see these things come and go, and you never think they'll be on your doorstep. And I remember being away, I think it was the beginning of March. I was away in Wales for a weekend with some friends, and we got there on the Friday afternoon, and on the Friday night, I think it was, the texts started coming in and the emails. And in the space of 3 days, effectively, um, every single one of my shoots up until August cancelled. And this was before even a hint of things getting bad in the UK and a lockdown happening. Because I think globally, um, one is that all my work is based on travel, so any risk to travel is a huge risk. And it really began with insurance companies pulling out of insuring productions. And if you couldn't get insurance for your actors or your crew, then you can't shoot, because there's huge amounts of money involved. And so it really, in 3 days, I turned from being optimistic and positive and, you know, booked up to the end of the year. My wife and I had plans to buy a house, get a new car, all of that kind of stuff, to literally being on my knees. How am I going to put food on the table? I have no work coming in. And it was this surreal position because I've been through periods, as all freelancers have, where you have little work and you go through dry spells. But it was this surreal situation where not only did I have no work, I knew that there was no potential work either, because everything was shutting down. So there was no point in me making phone calls, making emails, going to meetings. There was nothing I could do, absolutely nothing within my power to try and get more work. And it felt hopeless. It really did. And I remember on the Saturday on that weekend just having to go. We were staying in a cottage in the mountains in Wales. There's like 15 of us, and I was just falling apart really. And I had to go and run. I took myself off into the mountains and went for a few hours running up and down mountains, just kind of clear my head a little bit. But yeah, those first few weeks were brutal, just watching the entire industry shut down. Something that I never, I knew it was an insecure job when I started, but I never imagined the whole industry just almost overnight ceasing to exist. And as I say, this happened at the start of March. This was before we were even talking about, social distancing in the UK, let alone lockdown. So yeah, it was tough. It's been really tough.
So, you were saying you felt obviously undone by all of that, and you say you took yourself out for a run and up in the mountains. Is that something you do when you're mentally struggling with things? Is like exercise outdoors always a go-to for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That outdoors, I suppose I'm very fortunate in that my both my hobbies and passions and my professional life, kind of, there's a huge amount of overlap there. I'd say fortunate. I mean, fortunate in that I've been able to do that, but it's also by design. In that I wanted a job that absolutely lined up with what I love doing. But yeah, the outdoors and particularly mountains has always been my therapy. Um, I kind of need them to stay sane. I think, I live in London now. So I moved to London about a year and a half ago, which is a place I never thought I'd find myself. And it's a place I always thought I'd hate, but I've learned to really enjoy it here. I know I won't be here forever, and I'm enjoying it more than I thought I would. But there's just something about going back to the mountains, whether it's going skiing with friends, or whether it's a shoot going into the mountains, or whether I'm just getting out in the UK for a few days. I just sort of feel like I can breathe again in the mountains. I feel it gives me perspective on everything. And it was that few hours then in March. It was only a few hours, but for a few hours I was like, I can deal with this. I can, I'll figure it out. And then I got down, and then it starts to feel a bit hopeless again. And then you get out for another run, it feels stronger. So I think, yeah, that's always been a coping mechanism of mine. And movement. I think I like to move. I like to be on the move. I can't sit still. It's not good for me physically, and it's not good for me mentally either.
Absolutely, yeah, I feel you there. I think the perspective thing is really interesting. I think when you surround yourself with the enormity of this planet, like we're getting in the mountains, and they don't have to be big mountains, but just almost that sense of being alone with creation. It's kind of you do have this. I don't know. Everything does just come into perspective a little bit, doesn't it? Like it's just it's going to be okay. Like I've been, I don't know, I've had these moments where, like, everything's shut down, the road outside my house has gone really quiet, there's no cars on the road, and I've taken my dogs out for a walk, but the birds are singing, the flowers are still growing, the sun is still shining, the wind is still blowing, like the seasons continue, and I'm like, it's going to be okay. Like,
Absolutely.
that. And so it's something about the outdoors that just, it's like a ground zero. It just brings everything back to, like, yeah.
Yeah,
It,
absolutely. And it sounds, I would never use the phrase in normal conversation, but it's like the outdoors is my church. It's it's where I find God. Uh and it's where I find, I'm incredibly fortunate in that I get to see more of the world in a year than a lot of people will in their entire lifetimes. And I'm always conscious of that and always grateful for that opportunity. But I think that the scale of the earth that I get to see, and the different environments and cultures and everything, I've never been much of a blind faith person, but I think that the scale of what I get to see, whether it's environmental or social, civilization issues and human factors and all of this stuff, you kind of get to a point where you're like, certainly for me anyway, how can there not be a God? Because I go through plenty of times where I try and dissuade myself, and I have these theological arguments with myself. I can get quite philosophical at times, and I will try and convince myself that there isn't a God, and that I shouldn't believe in God, and that it's hard work and a waste of time, and life would be much easier and in many ways more fun not to believe in God. But I can't get there because of what I see in creation, because of what I see in the natural world, because of what I see in the sheer variety of cultures and belief systems. And I've met people in the rainforests of Southeast Asia who are devout Christians. I've met people of all sorts of different faiths in the most unlikely of places, but there's just this shared kind of human experience of the natural world that I think whoever your God is, you can't help but feel when you're in that depth of sort of raw nature that there must be something more than yourself. And that's a huge part of me and who I've become and what my faith looks like to me over the years.
yeah, that's great. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's cool. So I've got a question for you, actually. You're saying you're, in a usual year, you're away from home for 6 months of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, anything
Now,
between, I mean, 6 months is probably the average. It'll be anything between 4 and 8 months, depending, what projects I'm working on the time and how busy the year is. And it's seasonal, but it's also hugely unpredictable.
yeah, for sure. So you're a married man.
I am, yeah.
Congratulations. And how does that like, how do you maintain a healthy relationship
Oh, I
and
don't.
be
We have terrible, terrible marriage. No.
and, and be away from home for so long, like, I mean, some might think it's the dream, but
Yeah. It's not the dream. It's hard. It takes a lot of hard work and a insane amount of sacrifice, not just on my part, but on the part of my wife, my family members, my friends. There's a huge amount that you miss out on to have a lifestyle like this. And it is a lifestyle. It's not just a job. It doesn't feel like a job, and it pays the bills, but it's kind of all encompassing. My wife is an incredibly understanding woman. um, and she'll be amazed that I'm saying that, because we argue about little stuff at home all the time. Pardon me, as I'm sure most couples do. But when it comes to the big stuff, when it comes to my career and my travel and the impact that has on us both in the present and our planning for the future, she's incredibly understanding and supportive and encouraging. And she's particularly this year, she's just stood by me throughout. And she's a nurse, and she's actually, through all of this, she's probably got one of the most secure jobs in the world at the moment, but she's had to work harder. you know, so that we can still pay our rent and all of that. And she's been working hard whilst I've been sitting at home, oftentimes feeling really low and unmotivated, and not really wanting to do a lot with myself. And just, yeah, she's just proven herself to be an incredibly strong and supportive woman, and that's key. And I think just honesty as well. I mean, I had very blunt conversations with her at the start of our relationship when we were dating about what my life looked like, and about I'll be honest, my lack of willingness to change that, because I like it. And I always, you know, I remember conversations with my pastor always about my life and the impact my career has on my relationships, and it always being clear that I wanted to be with someone that didn't force me to change things, but wanted to be with someone who just being with them made me want to change things. And that's very much the case with my wife. But we had conversations very early days, and I would sit down and say, look, this is not going to be easy. You know, we started dating while I was going through a quiet patch, actually. So for the first 6 months or so of our relationship, I was pretty much around the whole time. I was doing a bit of work on a few UK projects and stuff, but I wasn't really going abroad much. And then, so 6 months into our relationship, it just like bam, just changed. I got on a few big projects, and that was me. I was gone. And I think she'd been like, the whole time she was like, what, you don't go away lots, what are you talking about? And then suddenly she goes from having me around all the time to me just being away all the time. And not just away, but away in far-flung corners of the world where, you know, we can only communicate via text on satellite phones, and, you know, there's no WhatsApp, there's no FaceTime, things like that. So it was a bit of an adjustment, but I'd always just tried to be really honest about what she could expect from that. And then as time's gone on, we just keep a really open dialogue. So she knows absolutely every conversation that I'm having with producers about shoots. She knows, you know, all the details for my shoots this year. She knows the details for shoots that are coming in for next year. She knows potential projects that I'm eyeing up. She knows the ones that I'm passionate about wanting to work on. And every job is a conversation. So if I get an inquiry come in for a job, the first person I speak to, no matter how much I might want to just jump on it, I always go to my wife and I discuss it, and we look at it and we go, well, these are the dates. This is going to be how long I'm away for. This is going to be the communication situation on the ground. You know, it might be one shoot, we might literally be out of contact for 4 weeks, you know, barely able to talk at all. So, and we just have a discussion about each job as it comes to it, and take each job singularly at a time, you know, and discuss the impact it will have on our relationship versus the benefits to my career and our finances as a couple, and we go from there and just try and make wise decisions. And that has led to me turning down some jobs that I have passionately wanted to do, which hurts, you know. I've turned down at least 2 shoots to Antarctica. Well, I mean, I've turned down probably 4 shoots to Antarctica, but at 2 of them, our relationship has been a factor in why I've turned it down. And that sucks because it's my last continent to go to, and it's a place I'm desperate to see. But there just comes a point where I know that shoot, no matter how much I might want to do it, it's not wise for my relationship. And first and foremost, I'm a husband before I'm a wildlife cameraman, and I have to honor and respect that first.
So good, really. Yeah, it's good insight. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
And then I can see that. And I know you, so I know
she knows that as well. Like, I don't hide it from her. She knows if I'm gutted about turning something down, but we have conversations. You know, it's all you can do.
That's great. Communication, so key.
Yeah,
100%. That's great. And so, obviously, lockdown must have been quite difficult for you, especially, you know, like travel restrictions and all those kind of things. So, and I know you don't like sitting down. You don't like not doing anything. So what have you done with yourself?
Yeah, it's kind of an odd one. It has been very difficult for me because I don't like being restricted. I don't like being told what I can and can't do and when I can and can't do things and stuff. I like to have options. I always like to have options. So to have that freedom taken away has been difficult. I am a massive extrovert, so it's been very hard not being able to be in community and be out socializing, and just, when oftentimes it's odd because in some ways in my career, I'm a professional social distancer. I spend long periods of time sat by myself in uncomfortable positions, in a hide or something, waiting for animals that, don't want to turn up. I once spent 5 weeks following some bears around South America, and we probably saw the bears for about 5 hours of that 5 weeks. So it's not new to me, but I think, and then when I'm at home between jobs, my wife's still going to work and my friends are still going to work, but I'm kind of sat here twiddling my thumbs. So I'm quite used to sitting at home by myself. But what was new was the sitting at home by myself and not really having much to distract myself, and I couldn't just pop to the coffee shop and be around other people, so that's been difficult. But I think once I got through the first few weeks of just dread and misery, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it was horrible. But once I got through that first few weeks, I started to kind of look at, okay, well, what can I control in this situation? What do I have some say over? And I guess I wouldn't say consciously, but there was some thought that went into it. I kind of looked at my life in sort of 3 different areas and what I could do in those areas to really get through this time, really. So I sort of looked at it personally. What could I do personally to work on myself? And one aspect of that was my health. Traveling, it can take its toll on your health. And I had a few jobs last year which were in Scandinavia, where they eat very well, and I put on quite a bit of weight last year. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to use this time to kind of go running a lot and go cycling a lot, and get back in shape a little bit and kind of work on my physical and indirectly my mental health in that regard. Another area was professionally. So I looked at my career and thought, well, if I can't be filming, if I can't be working, what can I be doing? So I've written a few articles for different magazines. I've taken part in lots of webinars and online training and upskilling courses and things like that. So kind of looked at what can I learn in this time and what can I maybe teach other people or help other people with. Kind of contributed to some lessons for school children around sort of geology and geography and wildlife filmmaking and stuff like that. And so there's been those kind of aspects of, okay, well, it's not going to bring in money, but it's a way of still progressing my career, or at least kind of, keeping it healthy whilst I can't be filming. And also I've been working on development for a few kind of personal sort of passion project ideas that I've had that I'd like to see made one day. And then the third area I think was sort of provision, really, like what and potential, I guess, what skills do I have that are maybe transferable to ultimately bring in a bit of money at this time, and also keep myself sane by still doing work. I think we were made to work, and I think a person not working can be quite dangerous in many ways. I'm very conscious that it's not always a choice for people, but I wanted to look at what skills, what passions, what knowledge I had that I could repurpose, as it were, to contribute and ultimately to bring a bit of money into the house whilst filming wasn't going on. And what that has led to is me working just on a kind of temp part-time contract for London Ambulance Service, which I started in late April, I think it was. And that basically came about because I'd spent 8 years previously volunteering for mountain rescue in South Wales, where I'd had reasonably high level kind of pre-hospital first aid training. And then alongside that, through my career. I've done a lot of kind of training courses around expedition medicine and stuff like that. So I had a fairly basic level of medical knowledge, but enough that I thought I could be of some help. And so when all this kicked off, I saw London Ambulance were looking for volunteers. So I applied just in a voluntary capacity, really, to go, well, I've got these skills, put me behind a desk or have me preparing equipment or whatever to help out. And they came back and actually offered me a temp job working on ambulances alongside paramedics in a clinical role, just in an ambulance support role, really. So just kind of helping out the paramedics in whatever they need my assistance on for treating patients. So I've done a whole bunch of shifts of that now, which is been great, both as it's given me something to do and it's earned me a little bit of money, and it's also given me an insight into what may end up being a future career change for me if and when I want to be at home a little bit more. And it's been great to just be able to kind of help out in the effort, really, you know, everyone pulling together in the country to get through this. And it's only a small contribution, but it's what I can do and it's the skills I've got. So I jumped at the opportunity.
That's amazing. Good on you.
Yeah.
No, man, I think it's real. And I was going to ask you, like, what advice did you give? But you've given so much of, you know, your own thought processes and practices that you've put in place, you know, during this time to, one, keep yourself mentally kind of positive, I guess, and driven towards something. But also just in terms of self-reflection. I think it's, yeah, some really good stuff there for us creatives to ponder over and you know, maybe to apply to our own lives and think, okay, I've got this time. I mean, we've had a lot of time already, but you know, we're still not out of the woods yet, and
Going on for a little while, yeah, I think.
yeah. So it's, you know, like, you know, there's a lot of creative people like you who are extroverted. You know, it's the way we're wired. We feed off other people, and you know, what would you say? You know, how do we make the most of our time? I know there's a vast variety of different, you know, creative is a big word and a big field, but you know, in expressive arts and stuff, you know, but what can we do you think personally to, like, just help us keep us, you know, mentally in a good place and positive, and but also, I don't know, keep that creative flame lit?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. Everyone's got their own kind of methods. I think you hear a lot about people going through like midlife crises, or, you know, moments where they have almost like a MOT, like a self review of who they are, where they're at, what they want to do, and all of that stuff. And I've never really kind of bought that it needs to be just a singular thing. I've always very much tried to just have this ongoing kind of look at myself and go, okay, where am I? Where do I want to be? How do I get there? What needs work? You know, and there's this kind of constant internal dialogue and critique, which sometimes can go more towards self-critique and insecurity, which is unhelpful. But a lot of the times I find it's a real driving force for progression. So I think just always having this honest conversation with yourself about that. And then I think in the immediate future and the present that we find ourselves in, I think it's about, I mean, I'm not going to pretend that everything I've done is this selfless, wanting to help other people and you know, wanting to kind of do all this. It's not. There's an element of that, of course there is, but there's also an element of me needing to stay sane and me having bills to pay and having to look out for myself and my family. And so I think there's this, you need to look at what you want on one hand, you know, where you want to be, what you want to be doing, whatever that looks like, and then on the other hand, what you can do, and find somewhere in the middle that balances out the tension of the two, and be realistic about that. But also, I think, don't get sucked into this. I hate it. I hate it so much. All these posts on Instagram and Twitter and all these kind of online forums being like, what are you doing with your lockdown? If you don't come out of lockdown having learned a new language and grown an extra limb, you're a failure. That's just not true. Come on, that doesn't help anyone. Some people are super driven, others aren't. I have days where I want to get up and tackle the world, and I have days like I'm in it this week, to be honest, where for the most part this week I've kind of wanted to sit around and not do very much at all, and lacked motivation, and that's okay. It's okay to come out of this and not really got any further in your journey. If the most you can do is tread water and keep your head above the water, then you're doing an amazing job, and just keep doing that, and don't be hard on yourself, and take a break from social media if you need to. I'm terrible with social media, but I have been trying to be a bit less on it. I went quite hard on it at the beginning, and it got me quite down, seeing other people being like all super productive, and I was like, I wasn't feeling that, and it made me feel bad about myself. So I don't have time for that. And I don't think anyone needs to make time for that. I think you just be realistic about yourself and what you need. You know yourself best. And if that means getting up, going for a 20-kilometer run, and then like bossing the world for the day, then awesome. Or if that means staying in bed and binge watching Netflix, and eating too much comfort food, then so be it. Because this is a new world for everyone, and we've all got to get through it, and that's going to look different for everyone. So just don't be hard on yourself. And then I guess the last thing, sort of just creatively, I would say, if you're feeling up to it, use the technology that is at our disposal. We have never been in a more perfect time to have a global pandemic. We have Zoom, we have websites like Masterclass and Skillshare, and all of these different opportunities to learn new things, and more importantly than that, I think, to just connect with this global community. We're all in this together at the moment, and engage with what's before you. As creatives, we're by nature collaborative, so collaborate. Just because you can't meet people in person, it doesn't mean you can't collaborate on ideas. It doesn't mean you can't get together with your mates, just have some beers over Zoom and just chat about whatever you would normally chat about if you're in person. It's not a reason to shut down the collaboration, just because stuff isn't being made as much. And I think that's really important to recognize. We have so many tools at our disposal to help us get through this at the moment. Can you imagine what this would look like if it had happened just 15 years ago? I remember I am that turning point generation where I remember a life before internet, but I also, most of my adult life has been defined by internet. And I remember being on a camping trip with my family, and I think it was my second or maybe even my third year of university, and my brother had just got the first generation iPhone, and he could get internet on it out of this mystical cloud. And I was like, what is this witchcraft? I remember emailing one of my photography tutors about some coursework I hadn't done or something. But like, can you imagine if this had happened way back then, when we couldn't just jump on Zoom and have a chat, and there weren't thousands of webinars and professional bodies and community organizations on the internet that you can be a part of? We are, in many ways, and it sounds weird to say it, we're very blessed in this situation. And I think it's right that we should embrace that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, so good. Ryan, thank you so much for giving me your time and
No worries.
sharing us your journey and what you've been up to and what you're doing now. And thanks. Some really good advice there, and just even for myself, just some really good stuff to mull over, and just to think
Yeah.
about. So
I mean,
no,
I'm
I
by
really appreciate it.
no means an expert on all of this stuff, and I'm fortunate that I've never really struggled with mental health issues or anything like that. I have lots of friends and even family that have had difficulties, but yeah, we're all learning and we're all in this together. So if anyone gets anything useful out of anything I've said, then that would be awesome. And if they don't, then I don't really care. That's awesome still. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
We
Absolutely.
we all do what we can, right?
Absolutely. And do you know what? We've never seen this in our lifetime, and hopefully we'll never see it again in our lifetime.
That's a
And
whole nother
so,
conversation.
yeah, well, yeah, well,
I've
there's,
got my own thoughts about that, given the state of the natural world, but we'll get onto that another time.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can imagine. But there's no book for this. There's no script,
No, no, there isn't.
and so
Well,
the,
there is, I suppose. There's the Bible. We should.
absolutely,
That's a book for it. But even that, it's hard. It's hard to have motivation to do the difficult stuff. And let's face it,
yeah,
reading the Bible is often a very difficult thing to do. Um, yeah, but yeah, there's no script, there's no instruction manual, there's no how do we get through this. Very few people in living memory have experienced anything like this, and we've got to figure out how to do it together. But that's
yeah,
the key, isn't it? That we're together. We're like
absolutely,
all stuck in our own houses, or maybe as lockdown's starting to lift, we can meet up with people a bit more. But we are in this together, um, as a global community, as a creative community, and then as local communities, church communities, families, friendship groups, whatever life looks like to you. We're in this together.
absolutely. I feel a song coming on from High School Musical.
Yeah, singing was never one
I'm
of my
not.
creative talents. Won't be happening. No, no. And you've called me just before a night shift, so I'm probably going to shower and then go to work instead of sing song. But there we go.
Good, good. Well, mate, thank you so much again for giving us your time, and we wish you all the best for
Yeah.
your future endeavors. And I really hope the industry picks back up soon,
Mm.
sooner rather than later for you. But in the meantime, I hope the job on the ambulances, goes well. Stay safe,
Yeah,
and I look forward to seeing you for a real beer soon.
absolutely. Yeah, I'll have to come up to Tiny Rebel. I've still not been to
Absolutely.
their little brewery bit, but yeah.
Oh, mate,
And
yes.
a little, a little plug. If not as a promotion thing, but if anything I've spoken about here touches with someone watching this and they've got more questions or they just want to have a conversation or anything like that, I'm pretty easy to find online. Just Ryan Atkinson. You know what I do. Yeah, just it's not hard to find me, and just drop me a line and we'll chat.
Great. We'll put links to your website and stuff on the video, so
Sure.
everyone will be
Yeah.
able to see. Great.
Yeah, it's a pretty good website. I can't remember who made that. There was some dude in Wales made that. Lewis Parfitt or something. I can't remember.
I do believe it was a challenge to build a website in
It
so
was.
many hours, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I
I think
still owe you for that as well, don't I? So what was it? It was definitely some beers involved. Could you build a website?
usually
I think you had 5 hours to build me a website from scratch
that was
with
it. Yeah.
just some dodgy sketches that I'd done of what it should look like. Well done.
There you go. I think it's advanced a little bit since then, so
It's
I can't take
still
full
going
credit
strong.
for it. But great, mate. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you
Awesome.
soon.
Great to chat, buddy. See you later.